Melania Trump was just called out to. Her face during what can only be described as a catastrophic, self-sabotaging press conference that she personally convened, ostensibly to celebrate the release of hostages, but in reality, to shamelessly plug her box office disaster of a movie. We are witnessing a level of grift and desperation from the former First Lady that is truly breathtaking, even by the standards of this family, as she stood before the press pool and attempted to pivot from the trauma of human beings held in captivity to the ticket sales of her failing documentary. People are asking, why is she doing a press conference in the first place? Why now? Why this specific format? But the answer, as it turns out, is as cynical as it gets. Melania was using these hostages, Aviva and Keith, individuals who have just endured 484 days of hell, as living, breathing props to promote her film, Melania. She actually stood there and said, oh, and I spoke with these hostages on the Melania movie, effectively commercializing their suffering to try and salvage an $80 million investment that has barely scraped together $7 million in returns. It is sickly, it is disgustingly transparent, and for the first time in a long time, the press corps didn't just let it slide. We are going to break down this entire spectrum from the moment she tried to monetize the hostage release to the moment a reporter named Betsy Klein looked her in the eye and asked the question everyone was thinking, why are you doing this? But it didn't stop there, because once you open the door to discussing Melania's past, you open the door to everything she has been trying to bury. We saw reporters pivot from the movie to the Epstein files, specifically asking her about her relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, a woman Melania referred to affectionately as G in emails we have uncovered, and her terrifyingly vague non-answers regarding Vladimir Putin and the safety of Ukrainian children. This was supposed to be a victory lap for Melania, a moment to rebrand herself as a humanitarian and a filmmaker. Instead, it became an expose of her past, her failures, and the dark connections she is desperate to hide. Let's look at the setup. Melania walks out to the podium, not to discuss policy, not to discuss a charitable initiative, but to talk about herself. She brings up the hostages, Aviva and Keith, and immediately bridges the gap to her commercial product. She says, it was an emotional meeting, and it is captured on camera and available to see in my film, Melania. Just think about the audacity of that statement. These people were just freed. They are processing trauma that most of us cannot imagine. And Melania's instinct, her first public instinct, is to tell you that if you want to see their emotion, you have to buy a ticket to her movie. She is gatekeeping their relief behind a box office paywall. It is a level of commodification that is hard to stomach. She is acting as if their freedom is a special feature on a DVD, a bonus clip for her fans, rather than a geopolitical event involving human lives. And the press noticed. Betsy Klein, a reporter who deserves credit for refusing to play along with the charade, raised her hand and asked the question that dismantled the entire premise of the event. She asked, why do you feel it is appropriate to use an official White House event to promote your documentary? This is the core issue. She is using the taxpayer dime, the platform of the office, or at least the shadow office they are running, to sell tickets. Melania's response was a masterclass in gaslighting. She looked Betsy Klein in the face and said, this is not promotion. We are here celebrating the release of the hostages. They called me. They said they would like to come over to thank me. That's why we are here. It has nothing to do with promotion. But we just heard her. We have the clip. She literally just said, it is captured on camera and available to see in my film. You cannot say buy a ticket to see this and then 5 seconds later claim this is not promotion. It is a direct contradiction that insults the intelligence of everyone in that room and everyone watching at home. But the failure of this press conference is mirrored by the failure of the movie itself. And this is where the story gets even stranger. The Melania movie is, by every objective metric, a historic flop. Reports indicate that nearly $80 million was poured into this project, a staggering sum for a documentary, with allegations that Jeff Bezos provided a massive cash infusion to prop it up. Yet, despite being in theaters across the country, despite the full force of the regime's media machine behind it, it has grossed maybe $7 or $8 million. To put that in perspective, compare it to a movie like Pretty Woman, which Melania's supporters bizarrely try to reference as a benchmark of success. Pretty Woman made $463 million worldwide. Melania's movie is about struggling to buy a condo in Miami. It is an utter financial disaster. But if you listen to the state-run media, if you listen to spokespeople like Kayleigh McEnany, you would think it's the cultural event of the century. They are going on television, looking directly into the camera and telling you that theaters are standing room only. Kayleigh McEnany literally said her mother went to a showing in Florida and people were cheering, interacting with the screen, and that it was electric. We decided to test that claim because we know the regime lies about crowd sizes. We know they lie about popularity. So the Midas Touch Network sent out our own investigator, a man we call Secret Service Sam, to actually go to these theaters and see the electric crowds for himself. What he found was not a packed house. It wasn't a standing room only. It was a ghost town. He went to a theater in Pasadena, the entertainment capital of the world, and found it empty. He went to the Regal in downtown LA, bought a ticket for row FF for fraud, as he aptly put it, and walked into a theater where he was the only person sitting there. Not one other soul. He filmed it. He showed the empty seats. He showed the silence. He joked, "Give me an E, give me a P, give me an S." What's that spell? Epstein file? Because the emptiness of the theater was the only honest thing about the entire experience. There were reports that they were even paying people to attend, buying out tickets in bulk to inflate the numbers. And even with that artificial support, the theaters were empty. It is a Potemkin village of a movie release. Fake crowds, fake success, fake enthusiasm, all designed to launder the reputation of a woman whose approval ratings are tanking. And speaking of laundering reputations, let's talk about why the reporters' pivot to the Epstein files stung so much. When Melania was asked about her past, specifically her relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, the mask slipped. She immediately shut down. She said, "I don't want to talk about that anymore. We are not going to be talking about that. That's not appropriate here." She tried to pivot back to honoring the hostages, using them again as a human shield to deflect from her own scandals. But the receipts exist. We have the emails. We have a message from Melania Trump to Ghislaine Maxwell from 2002 that reads, "Dear G, how are you? Nice story about JE in New York Magazine. You look great in the picture. I know you are very busy flying all over the world. How is Palm Beach? I cannot wait to go down. Give me a call when you are back in New York. Have a great time. Love, Melania." Let's parse that for a second. Dear G, that is a nickname. That implies intimacy. That implies friendship. She isn't writing to Ms. Maxwell. She is writing to G. And she references the New York Magazine story about J.E., Jeffrey Epstein. That is the infamous article where Donald Trump is quoted saying Epstein is a terrific guy who likes women on the younger side. Melania read that article. She saw that quote. And her reaction wasn't disgust. It wasn't a concern. It was, "Nice story about J.E. I cannot wait to go down to Palm Beach." And she wanted to go to the center of the operation. She wanted to visit the scene of the crimes. And now, 20 years later, she stands at a podium and feigns ignorance. She acts as if she is being unfairly targeted when the evidence of her social climbing through the Epstein network is in black and white. It is disqualifying. It destroys the narrative of the Melania movie before the opening credits even rolled. The hypocrisy is layered even thicker when you look at who directed this disaster of a film. Brett Ratner, a man whose name appears throughout the Epstein files, a man who has faced numerous accusations of misconduct in Hollywood. This is the visionary Melania chose to tell her story. We have to look at the interview Ratner gave to Piers Morgan when confronted about a photo of himself, Jeffrey Epstein, and two young women. Ratner's defense was nonsensical. He claimed the woman in the photo was his fiancée, but he refused to name her. He refused to identify the person who was supposedly the love of his life at that time. He stammered, claiming it was 20 years ago, claiming he never met Epstein before or after that night, despite the photographic evidence of them socializing. It was a train wreck of an answer from a man who is deeply embedded in the very culture Melania claims to be above. The fact that the regime picked Ratner out of all the directors in the world to helm this propaganda piece tells you everything you need to know about their circle. It's a closed loop of enablers protecting enablers. And then there is the Russia connection. During this same disastrous press conference, Melania was asked about her previous claims regarding Vladimir Putin. She had boasted that she had a relationship with Putin that would secure the release of Ukrainian children, kids who are currently being trafficked and subjected to atrocities in Russia. A reporter asked, "Has President Putin agreed to release any more Ukrainian children?" And Melania's answer was the terrified mumble of someone who got caught in a lie. She said, "I'm working on it. I'm working on it, and we are in the process. So I hope we have success very soon. I will keep you posted." It was a non-answer. It was the answer of someone who has no deal, no leverage, and no plan. She used the suffering of Ukrainian children as a talking point to make herself look powerful, just like she used the hostages of Eva and Keith to make herself look relevant. It is a pattern of behavior where human tragedy is just raw material for the Melania Trump brand. We also have to talk about the money. The financing of this film is a scandal in itself. We are hearing reports that Jeff Bezos, the owner of the Washington Post, put tens of millions of dollars into promoting this project. At the same time, we see the Washington Post shuttering, firing staff, cutting jobs in war zones, and decimating its newsroom. Think about that juxtaposition. One of the world's richest men is allegedly funding a vanity project for the Trumps, a project that is objectively a commercial failure, while simultaneously gutting destroying one of the most important journalistic institutions in the country. It looks like a payoff. It looks like a tribute payment to the regime. Why else would you sink $80 million into a documentary that nobody wants to see? Why would you support a film directed by Brett Ratner starring Melania Trump unless you were trying to curry favor with the political power structure she represents? It is a transfer of wealth that reeks of corruption, and the fact that it is happening in plain sight while journalists are losing their livelihoods is a grim indictment of our current media landscape. The disconnect between the regime media narrative and reality has never been starker. They tell us the theaters are full. We show you they are empty. They tell us the movie is a hit. The box office numbers show a bomb. They tell us Melania is a diplomat saving children. The transcripts show she is working on it with zero results. They tell us she is unconnected to Epstein. Her own emails say, "Dear G, cannot wait to go down to Palm Beach." This press conference was supposed to seal the deal on her rehabilitation. It was supposed to be the moment she stepped out of Donald's shadow as a force in her own right. Instead, it exposed the hollowness of the entire enterprise. It showed us a woman who has nothing to offer but lies, deflection, and a deep documented history with some of the most monstrous figures of the 21st century. When Secret Service Sam sat in that empty theater in Pasadena joking about the Epstein file spelling game, he wasn't just mocking a bad movie. He was highlighting the fraudulence of the entire movement. They can buy the tickets to inflate the numbers, but they can't force people to care. They can put Melania on a podium, but they can't make her answer the hard questions. They can try to rewrite history, but the emails, the photos, and the flight logs are forever. This movie, Melania, isn't just a flop. It is a monument to their arrogance. It is proof that they believe they can sell us absolutely anything, no matter how low quality, no matter how compromised the source, and expect us to applaud. Yep. But the applause didn't come. The theater was silent. The reporter didn't back down. And Melania Trump walked off that stage not as a conquering heroine, but as the exposed grifter who used hostages to sell popcorn and got caught doing it. The unraveling is happening in real time. From the empty seats in Los Angeles to the nervous deflections in the White House briefing room, the facade is cracking. They spent $80 million trying to tell you who Melania is, but she told us exactly who she is for free when she refused to condemn Ghislaine Maxwell and tried to monetize the trauma of hostages. We see you, Melania. We see the grift, we see the emails, and we are not buying the ticket. This is the reality of the situation. It is not just about a bad movie. It is about the misuse of power, the manipulation of the truth, and the dark alliances that underpin this entire operation. When you have the Christian groups of the Trump base being told to buy tickets in bulk for a movie directed by Brett Ratner, a man accused of horrific things, it exposes the moral bankruptcy of the entire movement. They don't care about the morality. They care about the power. They care about the image, but the image is failing. The Melania movie is the perfect metaphor for the current state of the Trump world. Expensive, flashy, promoted by billionaires, defended by liars, and completely, utterly empty on the inside. But as we continue to dig into the finances, into the buyouts, into the connections with Bezos and Ratner, the story is only going to get uglier. But this press conference was the turning point. It was the moment the public saw the mechanism of the con. You don't hold a press conference for hostages and talk about your movie unless you have lost all sense of shame. And based on what we just witnessed, shame is a commodity that has been in short supply in the Trump orbit for a very long time. The Epstein files are still opening, the movie theaters are still empty, and the questions are only going to get louder. Melania Trump wanted the spotlight. Well, she got it. And under the harsh light of scrutiny, the glamour fades, and all that is left is the griftiness. This is a developing story, and the implications of Melania's admissions and her refusals to answer will ripple out for weeks. The attempt to rewrite her history with Epstein is failing because the digital trail is indelible. The attempt to present herself as a savior of children is failing because the results are non-existent. And the attempt to become a movie star is failing because the American people, by and large, simply do not buy what she is selling. The box office disaster is just the symptom. The disease is the corruption and the lies that fuel the entire machine. Stay tuned, because as more files are released and more theaters are checked, the picture is only going to get clearer, and it is not the picture Melania wanted you to see in her documentary. It is the unedited, unscripted truth, and it is devastating.